Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last module. All right, so let's start with the agenda for today. All right, and of course, if you haven't downloaded the course materials, there's a link that will be added to that is shown on the bottom of the next slide. Okay, so we're going to first provide two GI examples. Sorry. All right, hold on one second. Minor bobble. We're going to first provide two GI example plan reviews, and then that will tie together the material we've covered in previous modules. Then we're going to have another example that should be a fairly complete review of a project, followed by a summary kind of thing where we go over the common design issues we often see. And of course, we will have another quiz. So after we review the quiz, we'll end the day with the MS4 program overview, and that includes updates that have been made to the BMP manual and the Stormwater website. So there'll also be some instructions on the training, including the evaluation and the certificates. So you'll want to stick around for everything for that so that you get full credit for this module and therefore for the course. All right, so once again, link at the bottom if you need some slides. Take note that the final presentation for today had a last minute update, so you may want to refresh if you already downloaded. So go get another one. All righty. And we have a rather tight schedule today. So we're going to ask that you type your questions into the chat or email them in, and our staff will do their best to get to everything in a timely fashion. Now, our moderator will answer them as we go, and then the rest, if we have time, we'll take care of them at the end. Okay? So once more, we are recording. So please, again, don't leave the training until the announcement is made to dismiss you. Okay, let's move on. All right, so in earlier models, we introduced what we mean by green infrastructure and some of the regulatory requirements pertaining to it. So I'm going to start with an example that incorporates GI into the design, and then I'm going to show you how we evaluate it to find out whether or not it follows what's spelled out in the fact sheet, which was covered in Module 2. All right, so of course the goals of this part of the presentation are listed here. So for the example, we're going to look at what was proposed and identify if and where the design falls short. Now, I'm not going to have time today to discuss potential solutions, okay? All right, so all reviews require figuring out which standards apply and then checking them for compliance. So the questions we must ask and answer are, what's the disturbance of this site? Does it trigger major development? Will the project be required to address water quantity, groundwater recharge, water quality, and groundwater mounding? All right, we'll then need to figure all of that out to see if any of those will apply in this particular review. And then we're going to see how they'll be addressed using green infrastructure, which is required by the rules. So it's important to know what the site looks like, what the pre-construction conditions are, as you all know, and then what is the existing land cover. Plus, we're going to need soil testing information. So let's take a look at what's going on in our example. So the property in question is a farm that's been in existence for many decades. It covers over 18 acres. The frontage road running east to west is a county route that has sizable traffic volumes. The property is adjacent to some forested properties to the rear, and there's also a stream corridor back here for a freshwater non-trout tributary. The property drains towards the stream, and then that flows south towards a culvert that's underneath this portion of the existing roadway. All right, so this is the topographic view with the stream, the wetlands delineation, and the 150-foot wetlands and 150-foot riparian buffer shown as a bunch of dashed lines all down here. Okay, the green arrows denote the general direction in which runoff flows across the land's surface. So the proposed development includes the clearing and grading of the property, construction of 25 single-family homes, widening of the existing road found on the right side of the plan, and another internal road. Both roadways will be constructed with 6-inch curbs and will each terminate in a cul-de-sac having a 50-foot radius. The stormwater management report indicated that 4.7 acres of impervious cover is proposed, but it did not include a breakdown into motor vehicle surfaces versus rooftop. That breakdown is important with the changes brought about in the 2023 rule amendment. So I started checking the coverages, and the homes are about 0.35 acres each on average. So that totals 8.75 acres. All right, the proposed roadways are 28 feet in width. So by my estimate, that's roughly 70,000 square feet or 1.6 acres of new motor vehicle surface proposed. So additionally, the existing portion of the roadway along the east side of the road will be newly collected where no collection system existed before, so it also counts towards the net increase in motor vehicle surface. So clearly, these totals exceed the thresholds for major development. So for this project, compliance must be demonstrated with the GI requirement, water quality, stormwater runoff quantity control, groundwater recharge, and if infiltration is proposed, and of course the groundwater mounding, plus the safety requirements and always maintenance. So to address water quality and the green infrastructure requirement, 4 small-scale bioretention basins with underdrains are proposed, and here's where they would be located. All right, so first let's look at the soil exploration map, which indicates quite a number of test pits were completed, although at the time this plan was prepared, only one central stormwater management basin was included, and that's that light blue area here. So perhaps the preliminary concept predated the rule amendments. All right, so as you know, major development projects are required to use green infrastructure best management practices, and they are smaller in scale and treat stormwater runoff close to its source. So it's good that the designers realized the single basin approach was would no longer be compliant, and then went with multiple BMPs. So as a reviewer, you would also want to check that for the revised design, the proper number of test pits and soil borings were performed. In this case, the soil testing report was not revised to meet the testing location requirements for the updated basin layout. So anyway, from the test pit findings, the seasonal high water table was determined to be at depths between 3 and 6 feet, mainly because modeling was observed, and the teal color boxes showed these depths below existing grade. So where the depth is preceded by an asterisk, cemented soils were observed. Okay, so additionally, from test pits 10, 11, and 12, the tested permeability rates were far below the minimum field rate of 1 inch per hour, meaning GI BMPs designed to infiltrate could not be used. So lastly, here are the approximate locations of the 4 proposed BMPs so that you can see which test pit most closely corresponds to the respective basin. So they seem to be within 25 feet of the infiltration area of these basins. And remember, that's another criteria you have to check when basins are relocated. All right, so let's look at the drainage area map for the proposed condition. All right, this map is a little hard to read, so I do apologize for that. But fortunately, the contributory drainage area to each underdrained small-scale bioretention basin is less than the allowed maximum of 2.5 acres as specified in the rules under subsection 5.3b. So that requirement is met for green infrastructure BMPs. However, the placement of the basins is too far from the sources of runoff. So plus, the GI BMPs should be distributed throughout the site and not grouped together as they are. And why is that? Well, the motor vehicle surfaces are generating runoff requiring treatment, and the GI BMPs need to be near them. Also, if the rooftop generated runoff or runoff from other impervious cover that's not motor vehicle surface related, if it's commingling with the motor vehicle surface runoff, then the commingled volume must be treated. But no information was provided regarding the roof drainage. All right, so moving on, let's look at each basin individually. So basin 1 is at the left side of the image. It's shaded in pink next to the cul-de-sac. So runoff is collected in lawn area, inlets, and piped to the basin. Plus, the cul-de-sac is graded so that the runoff runs along the curb. It's collected here, and comes back in, and goes all the way over to the basin over here, even though the basin is so close to the edge of the area of pavement. All right, basin 2, shown here in blue at the center of the property, is not close to its source of runoff, which is also shaded in blue. All right, since the contributory drainage area is so far away, all right, this does not meet the rule requirement for GI. All right, now basin 3 is also shaded in pink. All right, and it's too far from this motor vehicle surface portion and this portion. Okay, so has to go quite a ways to get in there. And then that brings us to the yellow area, which is for basin 4. So look how far runoff has to travel down along the edge of the road to get to the basin. All right. So even though the drainage areas are below the contributory limit, none of these BMPs that are reported as being GI are close enough to the source of runoff, nor are they distributed throughout the site. So this layout doesn't meet the GI requirements. Now, lastly, this light green area, that's roof area generated runoff that's not detained. So that could be an issue when we look at how the site complies with the quantity control design and performance standards. All right, so we know that the design does not meet the requirement to use GI, so that's strike 1. All right, let's take a look at other instances in which the project design does not comply with the rules. So here's a basin section detail. The details for each of the BMPs otherwise show most of the requirements for online bioretention systems, again, with under drains. They have weirs and orifices to attenuate discharge from the larger design storms. So far, good. All right, but I didn't see a bioretention media specification, so that would be something I would add to my review letter. Also, I didn't see the maintenance plan, so without these 2 items, the BMPs don't merit their TSS removal rating, so they don't meet the water quality standard, and this would also go into the review letter. So we're going to call that strike 2. All right, now there's another interesting observation from the review of the report, and that is the stormwater calculations, although they were prepared in 2022, they used the type 3 storm distribution for the 2, 10, and 100-year design storms. But per the 2021 publication of Chapter 5, NOAA C and NOAA D distributions are to be used, okay? So that would also go in the review letter and new calculations would be needed. So far, it's not looking good for meeting the runoff quantity control, so I'm going to mark that as non-compliant. All right, here's where it gets a little tricky. For the groundwater recharge, the report states that the project demonstrates compliance with subsection 5.4 of the rules because all of the runoff is infiltrated. That's a hard no. All right, why? Because they're only proposing under drain BMPs. Perhaps the designer thought movement of water through the planting media was good enough to meet this requirement. No, under drain systems are not infiltration BMPs, and they cannot be used to meet the groundwater recharge requirement. So furthermore, the narrative of the stormwater report even stated that these under drain basins are sufficient to address groundwater recharge, claiming the proposed 2-year hydrograph volume is less than the existing 2-year volume, all right, as shown in this excerpt I've put here in the red box. But the narrative is incorrect, as the report calculations themselves showed an increase in the volume of runoff by the proposed design. So once more, they don't demonstrate compliance. So we'll let them know that the project will have to be revised along with the narrative. So another thing I would probably add to the review letter is a reminder that if the design were actually infiltrating runoff into the underlying soils, then a groundwater mounting analysis would have to be included. That means if pervious pavement, rain gardens, small planting areas, or dry wells are incorporated into the design, then their impacts on the nearby structures would be required in addition to the assessment of the impacts of infiltrating stormwater onto the BMPs themselves. All right, so it's time to sum things up. So answering 3 questions when you review a design will check if GI is properly implemented on a site, meaning the GI BMPs are located close to the source of runoff, they're dispersed throughout the site, and that the drainage area limitations are met. So this example did not answer 2 of the 3 questions from the GI fact sheet with a yes, so this design cannot be called green infrastructure. So the requirement to use GI has not been met by this major development project. So that would definitely have to be reflected in the review letter that was requesting revisions so that the project complies with the rule requirements to use GI. And of course, on the previous slide, I showed you how the project doesn't comply with the other design and performance standards for water quality, quantity control, and groundwater recharge. So therefore, we're sending this one back. All right, so that's one project. And I just want to say that if you're unsure about something, always feel free to reach out to us for assistance. And I will thank you very much for your attention. I see that there's a lot of questions. Let me know if it's okay to move on or if you want to hold off for a sec.
Please move on. Thank you.
Okay, well, up next is another GI example, and that will be presented by Manesh. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Lisa. So hello again. Now it is time for our plan review example number 2. So the goals of this presentation are the same as those for the prior example. We will focus on whether the project meets the requirements for green infrastructure. So we'll look at what was proposed and then identify where the design actually does fall short. So let's take a look at what's going on in our example. So we'll start with what the site looks like, what the pre-construction conditions are, and what the existing land cover is. So the property in question is a site covering roughly 11.7 acres that is primarily undeveloped and wooded, containing the abandoned ruins of a single-family residence and related outbuildings on the northwest portion of the site. The site does run along a state highway, as you can see in the image. To the west of the property is a conservation easement containing a ponded area that's draining to a tributary of a local river. The site itself receives stormwater runoff draining from the east side of the divided highway, and there are some mapped wetland areas on the site as well. So let's take a look at the drainage area map for the existing conditions. So here's a topographic view. As you can see, the arrows here, they depict how the site would flow. So some flow from the road to the northwest and some flow from the highway to the east. Everything is going to be flowing towards the southwest portion of the site, with the high point of the site being in the northern area. The proposed development includes the clearing and grading of the property. There will be a construction of 152 age-restricted affordable housing units in a single multi-story building. There will also be a single access driveway, surface level parking, and multiple stormwater basins that will discharge to the southwest corner of the property to support the existing drainage patterns. The project will be constructed in 2 phases. The first will include 84 units, and the second will be 68 units, which are located on the left side of the building as shown. So from the stormwater management report, the narrative states there are 3 small-scale infiltration basins along the southern border that are designed to provide extended detention of the larger design storms, plus a northeast detention basin for the off-site runoff entering the site to the north and the east. So immediately there's a big issue with this design. All 3 of the basins that are proposed to meet the GI requirement are grouped at the southern side of the project. So clustering these BMPs together is not compliant with the GI requirements. Do remember, the BMPs have to be distributed throughout the site and manage stormwater close to its source. The proposed design is going to rely upon infiltration of runoff to meet the groundwater recharge requirement and water quality. So let's look at the web soil survey results, followed by the soil testing data before we evaluate the overall design a little further. So as you see here on the slide from the soil survey, the site is mapped as HSGA, which is pretty promising for infiltration. So let's look at the soil testing findings now. 2 sets of soil investigations were conducted. A total of 20 test pits were performed. The first group that are shown in green are from April 2021. And the second group that are shown in blue are from January 2022. So I've superimposed the 3 proposed small-scale infiltration basins onto the soil testing map to show which test pits correspond to the respective basins. Your review would also include a check of whether a sufficient number of test pits and soil borings were performed, along with the depth of the investigation, but we're not going to be covering that here, so as we can focus more on the GI aspect. I've also added the depth at which the logs show the soil permeability was determined, taking note that the groundwater was not encountered at any of these locations. The brown shaded rectangles denote results for other test pits. And for test pits 3 and 5, groundwater was encountered at 5.5 feet below existing grade. For test pit 6, groundwater was found at 6 feet below grade. And lastly, a perched water table was found for test pit 8 at 10 feet below grade. As with the blue shaded test pits, groundwater was not encountered at the ones I didn't call out. The report shows quite a variation in the test results for permeability, so let's take a further look at a table of the testing results. So here's that table, and I've circled the locations where the field tested permeabilities were less than 1 inch per hour. So unless soil replacement is proposed, these locations are not really suitable for infiltration BMPs. Given the low permeabilities at the encircled test pits, we will have a problem with the ability of the orange and yellow shaded basins to drain properly, and we can add this to our review letter. Next, let's look at information found in the stormwater report, which states the 3 basins are designed as small-scale infiltration basins, but we really have to check if they really are. So this is the node diagram from the stormwater management report. These are usually up front in the materials that are submitted, and I use them to look at how the site is modeled and make notes as I start my review of projects. So basins 27P, 24P, and 38P are the basins numbered 1 through 3 respectively. They have superimposed the inflow areas taken from the basin summary reports, with the totals appearing in the brown shaded boxes. The node report shows Basin 1 draining to Basin 2, and that drains to Basin 3, such that the contributory drainage areas appear to exceed the 2.5 acre limitation that's established in the rules and in the GI fact sheet. The connections between BMPs is something that has to be checked to determine if this is true. Remember from the fact sheet presentation that the GI BMPs have to function individually for the water quality and groundwater recharge design storms, and each has to meet the contributory drainage area limitation. So perhaps the drainage area map can provide clarification. And after that, we'll look at the construction details to see how this design actually functions. So here's the drainage area map for the post-construction condition. This shows the contributory drainage to each small-scale bioretention basin is less than the allowed maximum of 2.5 acres, which does appear to demonstrate compliance with 7:8-5.3b's requirements. But we have to dig further to evaluate how individually versus connected these basins are performing when it comes to the water quality, the 2, the 10, and 100-year design storms. Before we do dive into the construction details, I just want to say that I'm not including further review information for quantity control and groundwater recharge. For the required groundwater mounding analysis for infiltration BMPs, the only analysis was for Basin 1, and the most restrictive hydraulic conductivity with the factor of safety was not used in the calculations. So this should also be in the review letter. All right, so here's a close-up image taken from the plans, and I've added construction details that shed light on how these basins are actually functioning. So Basin 1 is on the right, and A-9 is the outlet control structure for it. The top grate is the sole means by which runoff discharges from the basin. So since the grate is at elevation 63, the water quality design storm infiltrates the 2, 10, and 100-year storms over top the grate and flow to Basin 2, which has outlet structure B11. And if you look at the detail, the lowest orifice has an invert of 50, which is below the water surface elevation of the water quality design storm that's contributory to Basin 2. So Basin 2 wouldn't meet the design criteria for infiltration basins according to the BMP manual. And then similarly, the lowest orifice at outlet structure C10 is below the water surface elevation of the water quality design storm. So in conclusion, Basins 2 and 3 do not meet the design criteria for infiltration basins according to the BMP manual, and they wouldn't really merit the 80% TSS removal rating. These contributory drainage areas would most likely be larger than the ones that you would find in Table 5.1. They would be more suited for those in Table 5-2, which would require a variance before they could be used for quality and recharge. Waivers are for the enlargement of an existing public roadway or railroad, or the construction or expansion of a public pedestrian access, which this project is not. So next slide, we're going to revisit the subject of variances. So there are strict standards to be met in order to grant a variance, as you know. More specifically, the municipality has to have a mitigation plan in place that identifies what measures are necessary, potential mitigation projects and or criteria to evaluate mitigation projects that can be used to offset the deficit that's created by granting a variance. Additionally, the conditions shown here, in part from the rules, must be met. The applicant has to demonstrate it is technically impracticable to meet one or more design and performance standards on site. Those reasons can be only engineering, environmental, or safety-based. And furthermore, the variance cannot be for the entire site unless an analysis is provided for each drainage area within a site. So the applicant also has to demonstrate maximum possible compliance is provided by the design. So don't forget, there is also a reporting requirement for variances. What's not shown in this excerpt is item 3, which is about the mitigation plan, which has to be within the same HUC 14 and approved no later than the preliminary or final site plan of the project. Moreover, if the variance is for green infrastructure, then the mitigation plan must use green infrastructure BMPs to manage an equivalent or greater area of motor vehicle surface. There are 7 other parts to the mitigation plan from this section of the rules that I have not covered here, but in short, a municipality cannot grant a variance now like it may have done in the past. Since information was also not provided on mitigation projects, the project is not compliant with the rules. So let's conclude the review of this example by answering the 3 green infrastructure questions for the proposed design, even though only one small-scale infiltration basin was actually proposed. So they must all be answered with a yes for the project to meet the green infrastructure rule requirements. So question 1, is the stormwater managed close to its source? And the answer here is no. The BMPs were not located next to parking areas. So the first answer is no. Question 2, are the BMPs distributed throughout the site? Well, the BMPs were all located near each other along the southern property line, so the answer is no. And then 3, are the drainage area limitations met? Well, it didn't look like basins 2 and 3 infiltrated the water quality design storm and were instead discharging downstream during the water quality design storm. So the answer is likely no. So to wrap things up, this project does not comply with the requirements to use green infrastructure to meet the design and performance standards for water quality, groundwater recharge, and stormwater runoff quantity control. So that about does it for this example. Thank you for your attention. Before we do move on to the next presentation, Changyi, are there any questions or concerns that need to be addressed?
There are a couple of questions, but I will try to answer them in chat. Since I'm going to present for the next presentation, so I may not be able to answer those questions, but I will try to reply to those questions after my presentation.
All right, great. So up next is Changyi Wu with Plan Review Example 3.
Okay, my name is Chen Wu. I'm going to present another example, example 3. This is an example of the stormwater management review from our MS4 audits. The goals of this presentation are to show you what key information we will look over when we review a stormwater management design. First things you have to ask is this project a major development? Does it trigger municipalities' stormwater control ordinance? So for this project we are looking at, this municipality adopt its ACO pursuant to the stormwater management rules adopted on March 2nd, 2020. That means there is a GI rules The ACO defines a major development as disturbance of 1 or more acres of land or increase of a quarter acres of regulated impervious surface and or regulated motor vehicle service. In order to check the disturbance, the increase of regulated motor vehicle service, and the regulated impervious surface, we need to check the land covers of the pre-construction condition and the proposed condition, and also the scope of disturbance. So we will look at the existing land cover and ask, has the land cover exists for the past 5 years? So here's the proposed site plan, and it's a residential development located in Burlington County. It's Burlington County. The project is proposing to construct 72 residential apartment units within 3 storage buildings and a single storage community clubhouse, and maintenance shared parking areas and the stormwater management facilities. And the aerial photos from 2021 and 2015 show that the land cover will not change in the past 5 years when the project was submitted in 2021 for review. And this project size is approximately 10 acres, with almost the entire site to be disturbed, and more than a quarter acre of regulated motor vehicle service created. And therefore, this site will meet the definition of a major development. Then let's talk about the standard, what are required in this case. Water quantity is definitely required, since it's required for all major developments. What about water quality? We saw there is greater than a quarter acres of increase in regulated motor vehicle service. So that's water quality is required. And also this major development, you can see that it's roughly, the size roughly at 95% woods, but the proposed site has significant coverage of impervious surface, so that definitely needs a groundwater recharge. And of course, this project has to meet the GI requirement. And here, the stormwater management measures proposed for this project include 6 small-scale bioretention gardens, 2 small-scale infiltration basins, and 1 non-small-scale infiltration basin. In accordance with the rule, the SCO, small-scale GIBMP are required for meeting water quality and groundwater recharge, unless a variance for strict compliance with the SCO is granted. This project did not receive any variance. From the summary of the contributory drainage area of each proposed BMP, it can be seen that infiltration number 4 has a contributory drainage area exceeding the 2.5 acre limits for a small-scale GIBMP. So infiltration number 4 does not meet the GI requirement. The proposed BMPs are highlighted in blue. The design seeks to distribute the stormwater BMPs over the site and try to manage the runoff near its source. One possible improvement to the design would be if the runoff from the top left corner of the site could be treated by a small-scale GIBMP located near the area. But that should be depending on the site situation, whether there is suitable put a BMP there. After an overview of the site and the proposed GI BMPs, the next topic to be reviewed is the soil information. The first item for the soil information is the hydrological soil group of the site. The HAG designation is the basis for estimating the runoff from the pre- and post-construction conditions. Approximately 7.1 acres of the site are classified as urban land sandy soil that does not have HAG designation from the Web Soil Survey. Because the project did not perform soil testing to identify the hydraulic soil group of the urban land sandy soil, the default HAG method should be used. This project site is located in the coastal plain. For pre-construction condition, the soil on site should be assumed to be hydraulic soil group A soil. For the post-construction condition, D soil should be used. However, this project assumes B soil for that 7.5 acres of area for both the pre- and the post-construction condition. Around hydraulic soil group designation of the on-site soil will have a significant impact on the accuracy of routing calculation for the stormwater runoff, peak flow rate, and the volume, and which would also impact the configuration and sizing of the BMPs. We will discuss this issue further in the water quantity standard section. Here are some experts from the soil exploration requirement from Chapter 12 of the BMP menu. Requirement 1 is for any non-small scale GI BMPs or non-GI BMPs. Requirement number 2 is for one or multiple infiltration BMPs, including small-scale GI BMPs, each equal or less than 500 square feet in area. Requirement 3 for one or more small-scale GI BMPs which each GI BMP is greater than 500 square feet in area, excluding porous paving system. In addition, there are 2 requirements that give some flexibility to the soil testing, since in many cases, soil exploration are conducted prior to the detailed design of the stormwater BMPs and are for other purpose, for example, geotechnical engineering. Therefore, the soil exploration may not exactly lie within the infiltration area of an infiltration BMP. Chapter 12 allows some flexibility in the location of soil explorations. If the new location of the BMP is within 25 feet in any direction of all the original soil exploration location, the soil exploration that is not within the infiltration area of the BMP can be still recognized as a valid location. Also, there's another flexibility that the soil profile pit can substitute for a soil boring, but the soil boring cannot substitute for a soil profile pit. So, but here you can see the map. The red dots on the drawing shows the approximate location of the soil exploration conducted on site. And we're reviewing the location of soil exploration. If the soil exploration is not within the infiltration of BMP or within the distance, then the soil exploration would not be recognized a valid location. So by this standard, we take a look of all the soil exploration and check if that meets the requirements. So after review and measuring the distance of the soil exploration versus the BMP infiltration area, the conclusion regarding the soil exploration are shown here. Note that this project performs soil profile pits instead of soil borings when soil boring are required. This is acceptable. So from the above summary, by garden number 1 and number 7 do not have valid soil explorations. The next thing to review is whether the depth of soil exploration meets the depth requirement in chapter 12. So, and then next thing after we can get back to the slide here, we have a summary to check whether the soil exploration that for each BMP, whether that meets the depth requirement. I think you probably still remember that depth requirement is 8 feet, or at least twice the maximum potential water depth generated by a larger stone in the basin. And also that's the depth requirement. And you can see that infiltration basin 1 and Bowery Garden 1, 2, and the rest of the Bowery Garden do not have the depth required depth exploration. And that is important. We will use this information later in the review. After checking the soil depth location, then we will have to check the saturated soil hydraulic conductivity testing and the season high water table. And I have to look into the details of the site plans. For example, test pit number 2 for infiltration number 4 shows soil reductomorphic feature at 32 inches below the ground level. And also water table was encountered at 50 inches below the ground level. Since the season water table is higher than the observed water table, 32 inches is recognized as the depth of the season water table. This season water table will be used to check whether there's a sufficient separation of the season water table from the lowest point of the BMP. And here's another example that when we look at the detailed site plan, and you can see that for this case, the reductomorphic feature and the groundwater table are at the same location, which is 70 inches from the ground. And next, we will review the soil hydraulic conductivity. Saturated soil hydraulic conductivity test must be conducted on the most hydraulically restrictive soil layer above the season water table or non-fractured bedrock, but located below the lowest elevation of BMP and above whichever of the following depths greater, 8 feet or twice the maximum potential water depth in the BMP. Tube permeameter test was conducted for this case. However, some of the tests were not tested below the lowest point of the BMP and were not tested at the hydraulically most restricted soil layer. So those test results cannot be recognized. Another point to mention is that if multiple saturated soil hydraulic conductivity rate in the BMP was obtained, the lowest value should be used to represent the tested saturated soil hydraulic conductivity, not the average. For example, infiltration 4 has 4 test results. The lowest value, 14.89 inch per hour, should be used as the tested results. Which means that 7.48 inch per hour should be used as the design saturated soil hydraulic conductivity in the calculation. So after reviewing the overall site layout, the soil information, the next topic to check is the stormwater runoff water quantity requirement. The first thing to confirm is whether the routing calculation used the correct rainfall depth and the dimensionless unihydrograph. This site is located in the coastal plain and in the area of Region C rainfall distribution. Therefore, the rainfall distribution should use type C, and the dimensionless unihydrograph should be the Delmarva. The rainfall depths are the county average of 24-hour rainfall. Since this project was submitted to the township prior to the SCO, that's in fact before the department adopted the inland flood protection rules. So the county average can be used. They don't have to use those factors to adjust the current rainfall and project the future rainfall in the calculation. The second thing for water quantity is that the selection of curve numbers. In this case, the design use hydraulic soil group B in the routing calculation, which is wrong because, as we mentioned earlier, there is a 7.1 acre of land that has no HHG designation, and the default HHA for the pre-construction condition and the default D soil should be used in the post-construction condition. So the wrong selection of the curve number will lead to the wrong peak flow rate and the wrong volume for the water for the 2 storm. And the next thing after checking the curve number is to check whether the runoff from impervious surface and the pervious surface are calculated separately. From the routing calculation, it seems that the runoff from impervious surface and pervious surface are calculated separately. So the next thing is to check the time of concentration, because time of concentration has a significant effect on the peak flow rate. From the screenshots of the routing calculations, the Manning's coefficient for the pre-construction condition was correctly selected because the drainage area is a wooded condition for the pre-construction condition. The sheet flow length is 100 feet, which is acceptable for the pre-construction condition. The shallow concentrated flow should use the land cover in accordance with NEH, which distinguishes different vegetative covers. The post-construction on the right seems to suggest that the contributory drainage area to bioretention biogarden number 1 is a pervious surface, which most likely, in most cases, only the basins only designed for the impervious surface. So let's take a look of the site plan to confirm that the contributory drainage area to bioretention number 1 is pervious surface. So let's look at the area photo and the site plan, and we know that it seems correct that the contributory drainage area for the biogarden number 1 is pervious land cover. The next thing to check in the routing calculation is the basin routing and whether exfiltration is used. Use of exfiltration in a small-scale GIBMP is subject to some conditions. Here on the screen, it shows the soil testing must be fully compliant with Chapter 12. The design of BMP must comply with all the design criteria in Chapter 9, and pre-treatment is required for contributory drainage area greater and equal or greater than 1 acre. Exfiltration cannot be used in any BMP design with an underdrain. If you recall the previous slides, the saturated soil hydraulic conductivity test and the soil exploration for biogarden number 2 are 53 and 38 inch per hour. So the maximum design hydraulic conductivity rate should be kept at 10 inch per hour. As biogarden number 2 has contributory drainage area of 0.78 acres, it does not need pre-treatment. And biogarden number 2 infiltrate runoff into the subsoil. Therefore, the use of exfiltration in biogarden number 2 seems proper. Let's take a look of infiltration number 1, which also incorporate exfiltration in the routing calculation by a permeability rate of 10 inch per hour. Because infiltration number 1 has a contributory drainage area of 2.17 acres, pre-treatment is required if you want to use exfiltration in the routing. The site plan shows that a pre-treatment is designed and it infiltrates runoff into the subsoil. So the use of exfiltration in the routing calculation for infiltration number 1 seems proper. Here, only the routing calculation of biogarden 2 and infiltration number 1 are shown as examples. But when you review a project, you need to check every basin. And there are some issues to be noted for the routing calculation. First, there are improper use of exfiltration in routing calculations. For infiltration number 4, it's not a small-scale GIBMP because it has 3.3 acres of contributory drainage area. So you cannot use exfiltration in the routing of infiltration number 4. Biogarden 1, 3, 6, and 7 do not have a valid permeability rate test, so they cannot use exfiltration in the routing. So but they did, so the calculation would be wrong. So they have to adjust their design as the routing calculation without exfiltration. Another issue to be noted is that the routing calculation of BMP are based on hydraulic soil group B soil. However, as we mentioned earlier, default A soil in the pre-construction and default D soil in the post-construction condition should be used. So the runoff volume and required reduction of people flow rate has to be re-evaluated based on the correct HSG soil. So after reviewing the quantity, the next topic for review is the stormwater runoff quality standard. The first thing to check is whether small-scale GIBMP are used for water quality. So infiltration number 4, as we mentioned many times, is not a small-scale GIBMP, so it cannot be used to treat the water quality requirement. The second thing to check is if the entire water quality design storm runoff volume is to be treated by the proposed BMP. And on the screen, that's from the SCO, and also from chapter 9.7, it stated that small-scale bioretention system manual, the system must have sufficient storage volume to contain water quality design storm without overflow, and must contain only the WQDS or smaller storm event below. So we have to check the details in the site plan. And this project, there are 2 BMPs, Biogarden number 6 and 7, that do not completely contain the runoff volume of the water quality design storms. As shown in the profile of the BMP, the water quality storm level is at 20.21 feet to 1 feet, but the top of spillway pipe is located at an elevation of 20.20. Because the spillway elevation is lower than the water level of the water quality design stone, so a portion of the water quality design stone will be discharged through the spillway without treatment. Third, determine whether the configuration of the proposed small-scale GIBMP meets the design criteria of the BMP specific for the type of the small-scale GIBMPs. As the previous slide shows, there are some BMPs that do not have valid soil exploration to determine the seasonal water table and the saturated soil hydraulic conductivity rate. So the separation of the seasonal water table from the lowest point of the BMP and also the drain time may not be verified. Then also the other criteria is to check whether the drain time would be within 27 hours, whether the maximum standing water depth for a small-scale bioretention BMP is equal or less than 1 feet. For the infiltration, is equal or less than 2 feet. And you also have to check whether the BMP whether the soil bed and the sand layer in the BMP meets the design criteria. For bioretention BMP, you need to have the soil bed 18 to 24 inches, depending on the vegetation type. And the soil bed material has to meet the mixing requirement. So you have to look at the site plan. And in this case, you can see that the site plan notes 2 feet of planting bed soil, and all those meets the requirement stated in the BMP manual. So for this soil bed that meets the requirement, and for infiltration BMP, the soil layer needs a minimum of 6 inches, and the sand needs to be a minimum 6 inches, and the sand must meet all the specifications as we stated in the BMP manual. So again, look at the details from the site plans, and you can see that 6 inches sand layer is designed for the infiltration BMPs. And of course, you would look at the site plan to see other detailed notes, whether those notes for construction and the post-construction meeting those requirements in the BMP manual. And here's continue those notes taken from the site plan. And here are to show you that this project does meet those requirements. So after the water quality requirements, we will look at the groundwater recharge requirement. So for this project, we use infiltration of the difference of 2-year stone from pre and post. And their proposed design is since the total infiltration volume by all proposed GIBMP is greater than the difference of the 2-year stone. However, the calculation is based on HSGB soil in the pre and also in the post-construction condition. And we know, and also mentioned many times, for this project, the default A soil in the pre-construction condition and the default D soil in the post-construction condition should be used. So which will make a difference in the volume for meeting the groundwater recharge requirement. After the groundwater recharge, we will look at groundwater mounting analysis, since infiltration BMP are proposed for this project. So here are those inputs showing the hand-tool spreadsheets submitted with the application. So let's see what is the analysis correct. To check the input in the hand-tool spreadsheets, the information from routing calculation and site plan are needed. The duration of infiltration in the input is 33.4 hours. But the duration based on the routing calculation and the volume that will be infiltrated to subsoil through exfiltration, the calculation based on those information should be only 15.82 hours. And also the horizontal hydraulic conductivity rate should be 5 times of the recharge rate. So based on the new inputs, the mounting height is 3.542 feet from the Stormwater table. So accordingly, it seems the mounting may encroach the basin bottom, but that is not a big error. You can reduce the infiltration rate and the duration proportionally according to Chapter 5, as long as the infiltration rate is greater than 0.5 inches per hour in the input, and also the infiltration duration is less or equal to 72 hours. And that when that under those situations, there's no mounting higher than the basin button, that would be fine. So the last but not least is to check the maintenance plan. Here are some items included as the maintenance plan. And as we check, that the maintenance plan has the responsible party, and it has the preventive maintenance task and schedule, and it has the blank maintenance log. However, it does not have the cost estimate, which is required in the rules. And finally, that the maintenance plan has to be recorded on a deed. So in summary, for this project, there are a couple issues. The soil, they have the wrong designation since they are urban land and they did not test the hydraulic soil group. So they have to use the default HHG, but they didn't. This project has insufficient soil exploration and depth, and they did not correctly saturated soil hydraulic conductivity rate test in some locations. For water quality, there are insufficient storage volume for some of the BMPs, and they use non-small scale BMPs for water quality when there's no variance granted from the township. For water quantity, they have the wrong hydraulic soil group designation, so which caused the runoff volume pickup rate incorrect. They used exfiltration in some routing that should not be used to meet the condition listed in Chapter 5 of the BMP manual. So for groundwater recharge, they use incorrect hydraulic soil group designation, which causes wrong runoff volume for groundwater recharge. For groundwater mounting analysis, it used the wrong horizontal saturated hydraulic conductivity rate and wrong infiltration duration. For maintenance plan, there's no cost estimation in the maintenance plan. So that's my presentation for this project. Of course, there are more to review, and it's so a careful review of every aspect of the BMP and stormwater management design are required. So if you have further questions, here's my contacts. Thank you. So this is my presentation. So I think we have been a long, we need a break. So now it's 2:20. So please come back at 2:30 for next presentation. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It's now 2:30, so we're going to begin the next presentation. We will be going over 5 of the issues we see most often that result in a project not complying with one or more of the rule requirements. These were from projects that we reviewed during the MS4 audits. The goal of this presentation is to provide an overview of common errors we see in designs throughout our reviews. These include not using the land cover with the lowest runoff potential, improper pretreatment, not capturing runoff from entrances and exits, post-approval plan changes, and misapplication of the groundwater recharge exemption in the urban redevelopment area. All right, so let's get into issue number 1, land cover issues. The project we are going to talk about was reviewed by the township under the Stormwater Management Rules effective on March 1st, 2021, meaning the older rules. Although it was under the old rules, the issues that we want to address are still valid under the new rules. Therefore, we will put this project in the context of the Stormwater Management Rules effective on March 2nd, 2021. As the Stormwater Management Rules state, for a runoff coefficient for existing conditions, it may be used if the design engineer verifies that the hydrologic condition has existed on the site for at least 5 years. And if more than one land cover has existed during the 5 years immediately prior to the time of application, the land cover with the lowest runoff potential shall be used for the computations. Here is a site plan for a proposed redevelopment submitted to the township in 2012. This plan shows the pre-construction condition. You can see that there are buildings extending to the upper right corner of the site and pavement on the top of the site. So when we look at the aerial photos of the site in a side-by-side comparison, we see that the land cover existent in 2012 has the lowest runoff potential, and it should have been used for the pre-construction condition. However, the stormwater management report of this project used the land cover existing 5 years prior to the submission, which was 2007, to calculate whether the increase of new impervious surface reaches 0.25 acres or more, along with the flow rate and volume of the runoff from the site. Let's move on to issue number 2, which is on pre-treatment. Pre-treatment is essential for many BMPs. It's important to review what is proposed and compare that to what is required. In this project, which predates the 2021 amendments to the rules, a sand filter with underdrain was proposed to treat the runoff from an apartment building parking lot and provide quantity control on a site with HSGD soils. First, all sand filters are required to have some type of pre-treatment, and for sand filters with underdrain, this requirement is found on page 4 of chapter 11.4 of the BMP manual. This is the detail that was provided. The engineer stated that a type B inlet with a snout is provided for pre-treatment. Let's look at what is required in the BMP manual. The BMP manual and the department's website are listed as the technical guidance sources under the rules. Chapter 11.4 of the BMP manual is the sand filters with underdrain chapter. The word pretreatment appears about 10 times in that chapter. Shown here, near the top, is text from page 5 of chapter 11.4 regarding forebays. Previously, this information was found on page 4 of the 2014 version of the sand filter chapter. The red box highlights the other portion of the manual text, which says you can also use other structural BMPs for pretreatment, but you must follow all of the design criteria in the respective chapter, including the maintenance. To bring this all home, a manhole or inlet of some type in front of a BMP that requires a forebay, or any of the BMPs found in chapters 9 or 11, is not an adequate substitution. This is a deviation from the BMP manual, so even if there was a compliant waiver or variance, the sand filter with underdrain still does not merit the 80% TSS removal rate, and the design does not meet the water quality standard. Had this project been approved after the delayed operative date of the rules, the project would not be compliant, and the municipality would have been out of compliance with the MS4 permit requirements. And just to note that if you are using the version of these slides that are provided on the handouts webpage, you may notice that the title for this slide refers to Chapter 11 rather than more specifically to Chapter 11.4, the sand filters with underdrain chapter. So please excuse that error. All right, so an additional issue is treating runoff at entrances and exits to sites, particularly larger sites like office complexes, shopping centers, public complexes, and warehouses. Often, these areas have a large radius in the curb to fit trucks and emergency vehicles, and that creates additional motor vehicle surface. Granted, there is sometimes a change in grade to transition to the adjacent roads, but not capturing runoff introduces TSS to the stormwater collection system in the roadway. Let's look at an extreme case. The existing site consists of about 1.5 acres, with light woody vegetation along the property lines. It's adjacent to commercial and residential uses and a church to the west. In the existing condition, stormwater currently flows outwards toward all of the property lines, away from a high point in the interior of the site. The design engineer evaluated 3 points of analysis from 3 drainage areas, which are to the south and east toward the streets for collection in the MS4 and to neighboring properties to the west. The web soil survey indicates that this entire site consists of hydrologic soil group D soils, indicating that there is not much infiltration occurring on site. The proposed development consists of a 3-story apartment building with a parking area and associated site improvements, totaling about 1.4 acres altogether. For the roof-generated runoff, the design proposed a bioretention basin with underdrain to provide stormwater runoff quantity control. That basin is in the blue oval at the eastern corner of the property, and it discharges easterly to the MS4 system. The proposed motor vehicle surface drains in 2 directions. The yellow oval on the upper right corner is the proposed sand filter with underdrain that will treat runoff from the middle and right portions of the parking lot. This system discharges northeasterly to a pipe, and the outflow is directed southeasterly, as noted by the blue arrow, to a manhole where runoff from both basins converge. The flow combined in the manhole then discharges to the MS4 system in the street at the bottom right corner of the plan. This system then flows to the west under the roadway on the left side of the property. The red oval is a portion of the parking lot that discharges to the south, where it will enter the MS4 system in the roadway without any treatment for water quality or quantity control. So this project does not comply with the design and performance standards. A trench drain is one approach that could have been added to collect this runoff for treatment. Let's look at another project. So on this site, it was said that it was completely paved. As you can see on the left side of the slide, there is a pool right in the middle of the site. However, it was not in use at the time. There were a few buildings that were in existence at the time that they were looking at developing the site, but this was what we got from an aerial photo on the right. Most of the pavement was ripped up. It was dirt paths and parking lots except by the pool. But by the time we got there, the impervious driveways weren't even there anymore. So in all, the site was dramatically different than what we had received in the plan. And a quick note before we continue. This project was reviewed under the Stormwater Management Rules effective June 20th, 2016. Although some aspects of the review, such as the threshold used for the water quality standards, differ from the rules in effect today, the issues that we want to address about as-built deviations from approved plans are still valid. So, looking further into the report, what we were provided was an existing impervious coverage of 1.61 acres. The lawn was about half an acre. And then in the proposed condition, they state they increased slightly less than a quarter acre of regulated impervious coverage. Now this is key because at the time of review, increasing a quarter acre or more of impervious coverage means you would have to meet the water quality requirements. They are at 0.22 acres of increase, so they are very close to the trigger, but would not need to meet the conditions for the requirement. Then what ended up being proposed was a 3-story building. And if you identify around the property lines, a fairly big island in the parking area toward the right is where they are identifying their pervious areas. So based on the information that they have given us through the designs and reports, we understand the total disturbance is at 2.13 acres. The increase in impervious areas is going to be slightly less than a quarter acre, as we just discussed earlier. The local SEO states that to be considered a major development, it either has to disturb an acre or more of land or create a quarter acre of impervious surface. And the project does meet that 1 acre or more of land disturbance condition and will therefore still be considered a major development, even though it is not going to create more than a quarter acre of impervious surface. However, what ended up getting developed was different than what was approved. Eventually, they added a proposed 1-story building, and they lost a pretty big area they were considering pervious around the island. They also put in an underground infiltration system. Under the current rules, using a subsurface infiltration basin for a drainage area less than 2.5 acres can be considered a small-scale GIBMP as long as all the design criteria are met. One criteria is that the basin will need pre-treatment of runoff to 80% TSS removal rate, but we didn't see one available to us with the plans for this project. Additionally, the roof runoff was commingled with the runoff from the parking lot, so the commingled runoff would have to be pre-treated to 80%. If, for example, they separate the roof runoff and route it directly into the subsurface infiltration basin, it may just need a leaf screen to pre-treat the roof runoff. These are just some design criteria you would need to consider. But going back to the site plans, as you can see, the building itself extended further to the left, so it got even bigger. And so as they built, they increased their building size, and as a consequence of doing this, they got rid of areas they considered pervious areas. So now proposed pervious areas have changed to impervious areas. So the proposed site is going to look different than what was originally planned. And they were already considered to be close to triggering the water quality standards, with being just under the quarter acre of increase in impervious coverage. As you can see here in this aerial image, there once was a piece of vegetated area, but now they decided to pave it over, and there is more impervious coverage than proposed originally, which would push them over the threshold for triggering water quality. With all this happening, they would now need to meet the water quality standards. So the key point to keep in mind here is not to stray away from your approved plans unless it was reviewed again. This last example happens quite frequently. Here are some of the details of the project. The proposed development disturbed more than 1 acre and it increased the area of motor vehicle impervious surface by more than a quarter acre, and therefore requires water quantity treatment, water quality treatment, and groundwater recharge. However, the township exempted the project from the groundwater recharge requirement because the township thought that all major development projects in Planning Area 1 are exempt from the groundwater recharge requirement. So is the township correct? Let's take a look at the stormwater management rules, specifically the recharge exemption, to see if the review engineer was correct to allow the project to be exempted from the groundwater recharge requirement. The rules state that the groundwater recharge requirement does not apply to projects within the urban redevelopment area. The urban redevelopment area is defined as previously developed portions of areas delineated on the site plan policy map as Planning Area 1. So the key is that the site must be previously developed and part of an urban redevelopment area. If the site is not previously developed, or if the site had been developed in the past, but the structures have been removed and vegetation has been reestablished, it is not considered previously developed. This is the aerial photo showing that the proposed development will merge the two individual lots. One lot is a wooded area and has not been developed. Therefore, the portion of the undeveloped lot does not qualify for the urban redevelopment area, even though the lot is in Planning Area 1. Therefore, that portion of the site cannot be exempt from the groundwater recharge requirements. All right, so those were some of the most common issues with projects we have seen. Here's my contact info again. And I'll check with Chang Yi, our moderator. Do we want to address any questions?
No, we can continue the presentation. I think it's the for quiz 4, right?
Yes. All right, so we're going to move on to quiz 4. Please stand by while I hand control over to Rachel to administer the quiz. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you, Peter. And congratulations, everyone, because we have finally made it to the fourth and final quiz for this course. Now, the cool thing about this quiz is that, yes, there are questions from today's module, but we also have the two worst questions for modules 1, 2, and 3. I know a couple people were asking throughout the other modules, you know, which question did most people get wrong? So now you'll be able to see that. And I have no doubt everyone will do better this time around. So let's get started. As an important reminder, upon the conclusion of this course, we will send you a course survey within 2 weeks. You then need to complete and send back that course survey within 1 week. The survey must be completed to receive either a certificate of course completion or a certificate issuing CPC credits. So if you review for an MS4 permittee, attended all 4 modules, completed all 4 quizzes, and are required by permit to complete this training every 5 years, you'll have to complete the survey. Likewise, if you are a professionally licensed engineer and you wish to receive CPC credits, you'll have to complete the survey. So please complete the survey. And lastly, like we've been saying the entire time, slides and recordings of this training will be available on the training website at the URL on the bottom of the screen. And they will be updated for future sessions of this course, which we typically try to do twice a year. As with the other quizzes, there are multiple ways to access the quiz. The link at the top of the slide will take you to our training website, which has the link for quiz 4. The link at the bottom of the slide will take you directly to the quiz, as will the QR code, which can be used on your phone. You must answer every question before you can advance to the next screen, and you must click Submit at the end to get credit. And please note you may only take the quiz once, so let's do our best. So the time is 2:52 right now, and you'll have 10 minutes to complete the quiz. So we'll meet back at around 3:02 for review. And the URL and QR code will stay on the screen for the entire duration of the quiz if you need it. So good luck, everyone, and let us know if you have any issues. All right, it's been 10 minutes and it looks like most people were able to get through the quiz, so let's get started with our review. So starting with some green infrastructure questions, true or false? Green infrastructure, GI, is defined in New Jersey Administrative Code 7:8 as a stormwater management measure that manages stormwater close to its source by number 1, treating stormwater runoff through infiltration into subsoil, number 2, treating stormwater runoff through filtration by vegetation or soil, or number 3, storing stormwater runoff for reuse. And the answer is true, because the definition shown in the question matches the language in the rules exactly. So this is exactly how it's stated in 7:8. Next question. So which question or questions need to be answered yes when designing a major development to meet the GI requirements? And the answer is D, all of the above. So these are the things that make a BMP and the general stormwater management design green infrastructure, trying to mimic natural hydrology as much as possible. And this is directly from the GI fact sheet. So next question. Which of the following GI BMPs has a contributory drainage area limit that is other than 2.5 acres? And the answer is A, dry well, because dry wells have a maximum contributory drainage area of 1 acre per 7:8-5.3b. And this information is also available in the GI fact sheet. Next question. So yes or no, can GI BMPs be located near one another for the following scenario? So there are 7 dry wells located adjacently on 3 sides of a large building. No more than 1 acre of roof runoff is directed to each individual dry well, and each dry well will function individually for the water quality and recharge storms. So the answer is yes. And this is because you have to check the answers to the 3 questions we just went over. So number 1, is the stormwater managed close to its source? Yes, the dry wells are located near the source of runoff. Number 2, are the BMPs distributed throughout the site? Yes, they're distributed along the 3 sides of the building. And number 3, are the drainage area limitations met? Yes, because each dry well does not exceed its individual contributory drainage area limit. Each functions individually for the water quality and recharge storms to be GI. Next question. Which of the following is recognized as a co-benefit of using green infrastructure? And the answer is D, all of the above. Because as described on pages 1 and 2 of the Green Infrastructure Fact Sheet, all 3 of these are environmental, social, and economic co-benefits of using green infrastructure. Additional co-benefits include increased property values and the removal of pollutants from the air through greater utilization of vegetation. Next question, yes or no? Is the interconnection between GIBMPs in the following scenario acceptable? So a small-scale bioretention system infiltrates runoff for the water quality and groundwater recharge storm events, meeting the 2.5-acre contributory drainage area limitation. The 2, 10, and 100-year storm events are discharged from the small-scale bioretention system to a large-scale infiltration basin, which is used only for water quantity. And the answer is yes, because from 7:8-5.2, the downstream large-scale infiltration basin can only be used to meet the quantity control requirement and is not subject to the contributory drainage area limitations found in 7:8-5.3b. Additionally, the upstream small-scale bioretention system fully infiltrates the water quality design and recharge storm. All right, so the remainder of the questions are from modules 1, 2, and 3. So let's see if more people got them right this time. And I'm going to actually pull up the results from this time to compare. So starting with this question, question number 10. So which of these can be used to demonstrate compliance with the water quantity design and performance standard? So the answer is B. And this is because it's the only option here that is actually listed in 7:8. The other two options sound a lot like option number 2 from 7:8, but they are missing the important second half of that option, which states the increased volume or change in timing of stormwater runoff will not increase flood damage at or downstream of the site. So option number B is the one that's actually in 7:8. So last time we had 62% of people get this correct, and today we had 71%. So that is improvement, guys. So next question, true or false? BMPs from table 5-2 can be used to meet stormwater quality requirements without obtaining a waiver or variance from 7:8-5.3. And the answer is false. Because per 7:8, BMPs from table 5-2 can be used for stormwater runoff quantity only. For them to be used for stormwater runoff quality, a waiver or variance must be obtained. So last time we had 57% of people get this correct, and today we had 67. So that's great. Looks like 10% more each time. So next question. Soil testing logs prepared in accordance with Chapter 12 are required for which of the following BMPs? And the answer is E, all of the above. So they are all BMPs, and they all have a minimum seasonal high water table separation requirement. Now, remember, I tried to make this point on Tuesday. A lot of people forget that grass swales can be BMPs and be used for water quality. So if a grass swale is to be used for water quality, yes, there are soil testing requirements. So last time, 49% of people got this correct. I think it was one of the lowest scoring questions overall. And today we have 61%. So that's great. All right, next question. True or false? In a small-scale infiltration basin, the 2-foot separation from the seasonal high water table should be measured from the surface of the sand layer. And the answer is false. Because for any BMP designed to infiltrate, the separation from the seasonal high water table should be measured from the lowest excavated elevation in the BMP. Therefore, in an infiltration basin, it should be measured from the bottom of the sand layer. Now, for a bioretention system, where do you think it should be measured from? From the bottom of the bioretention soil, if not underdrained, and from the bottom of the gravel, if underdrained. Because as soon as groundwater hits the bottom of the system, there will be hydraulic impacts. And like Changi said in the chat, this doesn't change when you're doing soil replacement. The soil replacement is not part of the BMP. So last time we had 63% of people get this correct, and today we had about 73%. Improvement all around. So next question. Which of the following conditions must be met when a stormwater BMP is allowed to infiltrate the entire runoff from the 2, 10, or 100-year storm? And the answer is D, all of the above. So, for example, if there's no runoff for the pre-construction 10-year storm, but there is for the 100-year storm, then for the proposed conditions, the maximum design storm that can be fully infiltrated is the 10-year storm. Again, this is meant to mimic the natural existing hydrology, and only small-scale BMPs that are tested in accordance with Chapter 12 can be used to accomplish this. So last time we had 66% of people get this correct, And today we had about 80%. So that's amazing. All right, and last question. Which of the following would be exempt from the groundwater recharge standard? And the answer is B, previously developed portions of a site in a designated center. So in order to be exempt from the groundwater recharge standard, your project must be located in an urban redevelopment area, which has a very specific definition in 7:8. It's not just any redevelopment site, and it's not just any site in Planning Area 1. It is previously developed portions of areas in Planning Area 1, designated centers, cores, or nodes, CAFRA centers, cores, or nodes, urban enterprise zones, or urban coordinating council empowerment neighborhoods. So, last question. Last time we had 62% of people get this correct, and today we had about 73%. And that's the last question. So it seems like everybody did better this time around. So that's really great to see. And that's the end of quiz 4. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat or feel free to email the group or myself. And up next is Max Murphy and Lisa Schaefer, and they will be discussing the MS4 program and updates to the BMP manual on the webpage, along with some training information. So please stand by while I hand over control to Max.
Thank you, Rachel. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Max Murphy, and I'm an environmental specialist in the Municipal Stormwater Permitting Unit in the Bureau of Nujipti's Stormwater Permitting. And today I will be giving you an overview of the MS4 program. As we go through the presentation, I will address key aspects of our Tier A, Public Complex, and Highway Agency MS4 permits. Afterwards, Lisa Schaefer will take over to provide you with the updates that have been made to the BMP manual and the webpage pursuant to the adoption on July 17th of 2023 of the Stormwater Management Rule Amendments. After, there will be some course-related information, including the accreditation and evaluation, so please stick around until you are dismissed so you are marked complete for this module. Finally, please leave any questions you have in the chat as we move through the presentation. MS4 permits include a wide range of requirements, including these key requirements noted here. We will be going into more detail regarding these requirements as we move through the presentation. Some of these requirements have been added in the most recent renewals of our permits. First, we will discuss our 5G3 permit for construction site stormwater runoff. This general permit, needed as an addition to the MS4 permits, controls stormwater discharges to surface water from certain construction activities, including clearing, grading, and excavation. These generally are construction activities that disturb 1 or more acres of land or disturb less than 1 acre, but are a part of a larger plan of development or sale. This permit is essential for anyone working with major development projects. As for post-construction stormwater management, first, it's important to note that design engineers cannot approve their own designs. The designer and the approver must be separate engineers. Next, for any amendments to the stormwater management rules, training sessions will be necessary for stormwater design reviewers. This is because attendance at this particular training is only required every 5 years, and we don't want to wait that long to train people on the amendments. Training will be announced by the department upon the implementation of a rule change, and attendance is mandatory and must be completed within 1 year of the adoption of the amendment. Community ordinances or regulatory mechanisms for public complexes and highway agencies are a key way to minimize stormwater pollution and flooding throughout communities, not just at major development sites. The purpose of these is to have mechanisms in place to keep pollutants out of stormwater so they don't make their ways to streams, lakes, and other water bodies. The top 5 on the list are the regulatory mechanisms applicable to the public complexes, while the top 4 are the regulatory mechanisms for the highway agencies. Retrofitting of inlets is another important part of the MS4 program. All remaining storm drain inlets that have not yet been retrofitted must be retrofitted by December 1st, 2027 for TRAs, December 1st, 2028 for public complexes, and December 1st, 2029 for highway agencies. When doing so, either the entire structure can be replaced with an updated one, or you may attach a bolt-on plate to reduce the size of the vertical opening of the old inlet as shown in the top image. If you only see the bottom image in your slides, you will need to download a new copy of the slides to see the updated version. TRA permittees are also required to establish a program that ensures that all private stormwater facilities are properly inspected, cleaned, and operated if the facility was built after February 7, 1984. Operation and maintenance responsibilities may be assigned to commercial property owners, developers, and homeowner associations. However, individual owners cannot be assigned responsibilities for stormwater facilities that were designed to manage stormwater for the surrounding area. Private facility owner and operators are responsible for providing documentation to the permittee that the stormwater facilities on their property are inspected annually and maintained according to approved maintenance plans. If there is not an approved maintenance plan, the permittees can prepare a retroactive maintenance plan for certain infrastructure or inspect at least 4 times annually and after each rainfall of an inch or more. Permittees must keep an inventory of the locations and types of private stormwater facilities, as well as records of inspections, cleanings, maintenance and repair work, and any problems or enforcement actions that have been taken. The location and types of these private facilities will need to be included in the map created for the Watershed Improvement Plan, which we'll cover a little later. All Tier A and highway agency MS4 outfalls are to be inspected for stream scouring and illicit discharge at least once every 5 years. Permittees must inspect at least 20% of the total annually on a rotation so that all outfalls have been inspected by the end of the 5-year permit cycle. Public complex MS4 outfalls are required to be inspected every year. Please check your specific MS4 permit for any additional requirements. The definition of outfalls includes not only outfall pipes, but open conveyances as well. All new or newly identified outfalls, as well as complaints or reports of scouring or illicit discharge, must be inspected within 30 days, and any reports of scouring need to be remediated within 12 months of discovery, unless the department approves additional time. Mapping of all stormwater infrastructure is due January 1st, 2026 for TRAs and public complexes and January 1st, 2027 for highway agencies. This means mapping everything that collects or conveys stormwater, including outfalls, groundwater discharge points, interconnections, storm drain inlets, manholes, stormwater conveyance systems, pump stations, and any other stormwater facilities. Permittees are also required to map the property boundaries of maintenance yards and other ancillary operations. The mapping must be submitted to the department as a georeference shapefile, geodatabase, or AutoCAD file with all other non-applicable data stripped out. The department has developed a free mapping tool for permittees to use, and we can provide ArcGIS Online licenses for free. If the DEP mapping tool is used, data submittal is automatic. Otherwise, the files will need to be uploaded via the online stormwater document submittal service. The MS4 infrastructure map shall be posted on the permittee's dedicated stormwater webpage when it is complete. There are many water quality impairments and resulting TMDLs that affect waters across the state. These impairments affect fish and aquatic biota, drinking water intakes that supply the water we drink, and even rivers and coastal waters where many of us swim every summer. Many of these waters are affected by MS4 discharges, and therefore the department requires that permittees develop a watershed improvement plan to determine what improvements can be made to reduce their contribution of pollutants that are causing impairments in the state water. The watershed improvement plan consists of 3 phases, the first of which involves data collection and summarization, which is due January 1st, 2026 for TRAs and public complexes, and January 1st, 2027 for highway agencies. Guidance for the Watershed Improvement Plan can be found on the department's website. Finally, I wanted to speak a little bit about the WRC permit. Wood waste recycling and leaf composting are federally regulated industrial activities that require a NJPD's stormwater permit. Through our MS4 compliance audits, we found that MS4 facilities that perform these activities were not properly managing their stormwater discharges and therefore contributing pollutants to surface and groundwater. This general permit became effective January 1st, 2023, and ensures that proper permit coverage is established for stormwater discharges from wood waste recycling activities statewide at both MS4 owned and privately owned facilities. That wraps up the MS4 program overview. You can find the contact info for the MS4 unit on this slide. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat or unmute yourself. If there are any questions in the chat, we'll look them over and respond as necessary. Up next is Lisa Schaefer. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thanks, Max. I really appreciate the presentation. All right, so we're almost at the end of our training. And pursuant to the adoption of the rule amendments from 2023, the BMP manual chapters that were adapted, updated to align with the rule adoption are listed here. So additionally, we had some FAQs that were overhauled to address various issues. So just so you know, going forward, we are working on revisions to Chapter 12 and even Chapter 6, Groundwater Recharge. Okay, so these are just screenshots from the updated BMP manual webpage. So everything was updated to the rule adoption and they are marked accordingly. Okay, you can see wherever it says updated, that's it. Pretty clear. All right. Now, the FAQs have also been expanded to address various issues, some of which may have been mentioned elsewhere in the training. But the newest FAQs are on the bottom of the webpage, just above the blue footer. Just look for the rule adoption date so you're on the right set. If you click on a question, okay, like here or something, it will expand to show the answer on the webpage. All right, so our BMP manual webpage, on it, we provide templates for the Municipal Stormwater Control Ordinance, known as the SCO in short, for use by a municipality. The updates to the SCO also align with the rule adoption and can be downloaded in Word or PDF formats. On the left is a screenshot from the updated page for the items available to download. There's also a clean copy. Plus, there's a strike-through version that illustrates where text was removed, with the new text appearing below it in red. And then there's the simplified version. This simplified one cites subchapter and section numbers from the stormwater management rules instead of the full text, and that is to reduce or eliminate the need for the municipalities to revise their ordinance when the stormwater management rules are amended. So a municipality has to comply with the applicable laws and procedures for the passage and adoption of ordinances pursuant to this simplified version. Now, municipalities must have amended their municipal stormwater control ordinance within 12 months of written notification by the department of the need for the modification and update. That notification was sent on July 17th of 2023, so we are now well past that deadline. And on the lower part of this slide is a summary of the updates that were made to the SEO template to match the rule adoption. We also updated the hyperlinks throughout the document and just basically cleaned up its appearance. All right, so these are also some links you may need for your reference. We hope that you'll use the slides going forward to refer back to, and they will be made publicly available after we process the video. So that brings us to the closing information regarding the training. All right, so the next course offering will be next year. You're a reviewer, so you're covered for 5 years, but you're always encouraged to download the newest slides for those sessions between when you have to next take it. And you can certainly view the videos at your convenience before your certification expires. But also, don't forget to periodically check our webpage for updated chapters, along with other links for rainfall data, other training, and so forth. So as was mentioned earlier, the email with the link for the course evaluation survey will go out soon, and we need a response by the close of business on the date specified in the email. As we said earlier, the survey must be completed to receive either a certificate of course completion or a certificate in which we issue CPC credits. So if you review for an MS4 permittee, attend all 4 modules, complete all 4 quizzes, and are required by the permit to complete this training every 5 years, you'll have to complete the survey before we send out certificates. So, and likewise, if you're a professionally licensed engineer and you want credits, you're also going to need to complete the survey as it is a prerequisite to us issuing any credits. All right, and then we'll send everything out after we get the course evaluations back. And we'll use your registration email for this mailing. If your address changes, it's your responsibility to notify us. Okay, so by the way, we're going to continue to use the shared email shown on this account, on this slide, for future training announcements. So if you haven't already done so, please make us a trusted sender. And we ask this because so many emails get returned. So also, if and when your email changes in the future, domain or you change employers, whatever, just please keep us in the loop. All right, so that about does it for today. Thank you, everyone. And we'll
I'm
keep the
sorry.
room. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, before you, the case is not end yet. So I want to talk about something about the catch basins in the chat. Catch basins is not the BMP that's being verified in the that has assigned TSA removal rate. So you cannot use the BMP that the catch basin to do the water quality treatment. And also someone asking about the real rule proposal, the NJPAC. Sorry, because those rules has not been adopted. So we cannot talk about it in this training, but I would like to direct, sorry, I have to share my screen here, direct your attention to the rule proposal in our DP website. So the first set that was proposed on August 5th, 2024 is the NJPAC rules. And then after that, we received substantial amounts of comments, and some of the comments are really good one. So we reconsider that. So we did some changes to the rule proposal, so which leads to the substantial change upon adoption to the proposed NJPAC rules. So there is the second set of the rule proposal on July 21st, 2025. And the comment period, it will be end tomorrow. So I know there's a lot of questions that from the trainings, the attendees, And some of those questions probably is like rooted from the rules. So if you really want to make comments that within those the rule requirement within the rule proposal is the less chance you can make the comments. So remember, make the comments, go to DEP website, which is like under the DEP webpage, and then go to the rule proposal. And then here is the kernel rule proposal. And then you can scroll down and then you can see this one close on September 19th. So there's a chance you can make the comments. So basically, the NJPEG rule proposal regarding the stormwater management rule would enhance the water quality requirement for the redevelopment project. So I hope you go to take a look, and if you have some comments, you are so welcome to make the comments. And also at the same time, we will publish BMP menus along with the if the rule being adopted, we'll publish the BMP that being updated to the rule proposal immediately after the adoption at the same day. So don't worry that you will worry that we don't have BMP to support the rule. And finally, we of course the technology and our knowledge about the stormwater and soil testing, all those essential engineering information are updated frequently. So we will publish BMP menu when there's a new information we think that it will be impact the current publication. So as we are planning to update chapter 12 for soil testing, which we has been a lot of disagreement, proposed changes to those, and chapter 6 for the groundwater recharge. So please come to visit our website very often to check those updates. And we will, if the change to the BMP is substantial, we will have a comment period for those BMP chapters. So you will get a chance to comment too. So I think that's pretty much we have for today and for this course. So if you have any question or you feel I did not answer, I try to answer all the questions in the chat. But if you feel you want to continue the discussion or you feel I did not really answer your questions, yeah, you are welcome to email our DWQ email account. We are so happy to see those questions and to discuss with you our thoughts. So so it's back to
I got it.
Lisa.
Hey, all right. So I'm putting up on the screen a web page for the real rule. The link is in the chat and the public comment is here. Okay. So this way you can read it. As Chingy said, it ends tomorrow. All right. But so the link is in the chat if you need it. All right. And with that being said, as he said, you can email us questions. So that's at the bottom of the slide. Okay. And then I'm hoping you can see my screen. It's freaking out on me, but here we go. So that is everything that we have today. You guys were a really great class. And remember, the evaluations, we just have to collate the data and get through it. And we should be sending them out, very, very shortly, like maybe a week or two at the very most. All right. So that being said, that will conclude the training. You are welcome to, if there are any more questions, You can put them in the chat. We'll stick around for a few more minutes. We did finish early today, but thank you, everyone. You are dismissed.
Yeah, we will send out the survey for the course next week or so. So please check your email. Thank you.